spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. Baby, you're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
Welcome to the Sweet Spot Podcast. My name is Lynn, your host, and Ken's my co-host. Ken, how's it going?
Oh, Lynn, it is going. I'm so happy to be here. Looking forward to this episode of the Sweet Spot Podcast.
This is episode 341.
341? That's hard to believe, but that's quite impressive, Lynn. Good job.
Well, we are both former Disneyland Custodial cast members, and
Yes.
we are hosting the #1 Disneyland podcast, hosted by two former Disneyland Custodial cast members.
Number one. Huh.
Yep.
Quite impressive. Yeah. We're also authors.
Yeah, we are. What are we authors of, Ken?
We are authors of two books. Both of them are called Cleaning the Kingdom. The first one is called Cleaning the Kingdom, Keeping Walt's Dream Spotless. Mm-hmm. And the second one is called Cleaning the Kingdom, Night, Day, Past, and Present. And they are must-haves for any fans of Disneyland or clean theme parks or anyone who's ever worked with a mop or a broom. So, yeah.
Yes, true. We are going to be at D23 Expo. That will be September 9th, 10th, and 11th. I believe it's sold out, but I think there's ways to get tickets nowadays. But if you are going to be going, we will be in booth 206 over in the, I think they call it the Emporium, where all the vendors are. We're going to be over there in a booth, and just look for us.
206. We will be there with a couple of our friends.
Yep. Selling
fine books and autographing them.
Yes, and we will have both books on audio available in physical form on a USB drive. They're separate, so you have to buy them separately. But they come in a nice little box that has, Queen of the Kingdom on it. It really look cool. I've really been impressed with the work that's been done there. But, yeah, so we will have those for sale. We'll have our regular books for sale, and for listeners, we'll have buttons. So check that out. Also, wanted to mention that if you want to join our Patreon and be a part of our current events that we record, where you can chime in on the latest Disneyland Resort news, you can join our Patreon and receive a bonus episode once a month. You can go to Patreon, search the Sweep Spot, and join for $5 or more, and you get those bonuses. If you just want to give $1, we have people that do that just to help out, and it really
every
does
little
help.
bit helps.
It does.
So thank you so much.
Wanted to give another explanation since this is still fairly new. We have divided up the show into two sections. We have the current events show, and then we have the episode show that we number. So this is number 341. The current events will have current event news up to the date that we record it, and so we have a show every week, and our main topic will be every other week, and the current events will be every other week. So yeah, it should be, hope you're enjoying that new format, and I know that we are.
Yes.
So also wanted to mention our sponsor. We have Concierge.
Concierge, well, Lynn's a little too humble, so let me talk about him. Concierge is our magical vacation planning partners. The reason why Lynn's so humble about it is because he's working with them now. So if you contact Concierge, you might get Lynn to help you plan your Disney getaway vacation. And really, you should not plan another Disney Getaway vacation without Concierge. That's CONCIEARS.com. Go to concierge.com. They're the magical vacation planning partners. They focus specifically on Disney. So for any of your Disney Getaway vacation needs, whether you want to go to Disneyland or Walt Disney World or any of the other stuff like the Disney cruise, go to concierge.com. Check it out. They'll do the heavy lifting for you as far as planning your next Disney Getaway vacation, and you book a package with them. Okay, like a cruise line for a week, or hotel stays with theme park tickets. A package. Book a package with them and tell them that the Sweep Spot sent you, and you can get a special gift that way. So so thank you to Concierge for sponsoring the Sweep Spot.
That's right, and also. The Instagram. I'm going to try to do more Instagram. You can follow us over at The Sweep Spot on Instagram. All right. Well, tonight we're going to talk about where we do coverage over like a land, and we talk about that one specific land. And tonight we're going to be talking about Tomorrowland. So I'm really excited to get into that. So why don't we go ahead and get right into it? So on this episode, we're going to touch again on another land, and what we do is we focus in on the land and we talk about all the specifics about it. We don't go real deep into it because we've done that in previous shows where we talk about maybe one attraction and we talk about the history of that attraction. There's still a few we haven't hit yet, and we will eventually. Utopia is one of them. But what we do, and we've done this in the past, we've done Fantasyland, Frontierland, Adventureland, New Orleans, Critter Country, Galaxy's Edge, and Toontown. So now we're going to be talking about Tomorrowland. And Tomorrowland, was one of the last lands that was really developed when Disneyland opened because, Walt had ideas for Adventureland and Fantasyland, and Tomorrowland was something that I think that they started to run out of budget maybe when it came to that land.
That was,
yeah.
Well, plus stuff was, you think about it, Walt was collecting ideas for Disneyland for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And Tomorrowland, by its very nature, it's much more difficult to say, well, I really like this thing from my childhood, so I'm going to, because by then it's 50 years old.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense to put it in Tomorrowland. So, Tomorrowland by its very nature, I think, was something that they couldn't really do a lot of advanced planning for until, it was time to get down to brass tacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of like the beginnings of it, and Tomorrowland's had a lot of changes over the year, probably more than any other land that I can think of in the park. That with the amount of attractions that have come and gone, definitely yes. Tomorrowland is the one with the most, and we're probably not going to touch on all these. I have a list of some former ones that stick out, but we've we've kind of went into depth on a lot of this in the past, but this is more of an overview and just a discussion to talk about Tomorrowland in itself. Talk about a little bit of the past, present, and maybe some future too. And we're going to touch a little bit on working in Tomorrowland when we were there. So let's start off with the current land. I'm going to read some of the attractions here. Buzz Lightyear, This is not official names. I know they're longer titles. Star Tours, Astro Orbiter, Space Mountain, Utopia, Subs, so Finding Nemo submarines, the train station, and Monorail. So that's what's currently open, right?
Yes,
There's some vacant spaces of things that did not reopen when the pandemic happened, right?
Well, yeah.
So like what was it? The Innovations building. What was that? The
Star Wars launch bay.
Launch bay. That's right. So that did not reopen, and I don't know what the future holds for that. We'll talk about that a little later. And over in the Magic Eye Theater, they were showing movie previews, and for probably the last while since the Captain EO tribute, I think. Which that was what, 2010 or something. So for a while now, they've been just doing movie previews there. I think it was just to kind of fill the space and try to create some energy for some new films they had coming up. So those are the attractions that are currently there now. We also have some food locations. We have Alien Pizza Planet and Galactic Grill. Yes. Or Tomorrowland Terrace, as we know it.
Coke Terrace.
Coke Terrace, yeah. There's only 2 shops currently open in Tomorrowland at the moment. There's Star Trader, and then there's the Little Green Men's Store Command. It's a long title.
That's right there at the exit of the Buzz Lightyear attraction.
Yeah. Remember when that store had the remember those? What were those kiosks with you make your own CDs and?
Oh, the Disneyland Forever kiosks?
Yeah, remember that shop that was in there? It was pretty. They had some good stuff in there.
They also had that at the Main Street Music Shop.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah. I think that was when Rocket Rods was open, and then when Rocket Rods closed, that store remained for a little while. There is other little stores there. They didn't mention them on the Disneyland app as store locations, but I know that over by Utopia, there's that. It used to be the Hatmosphere. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's like still.
I remember when it was called the Mod Hatter.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Mod Hatter. That's still there. And then they also had turned that little location that used to be under. Remember where Radio Disney?
Yeah.
Used to be. They turned that in like a little. They had pens in there and things, but I didn't notice if that was open last time I was there. It's something I don't really remember going over there.
That wasn't the top of your list to check out?
No.
Yeah.
I went in there maybe. Well, it's before COVID, so it was like I don't know. Couple of years ago. Then we have 2 restrooms in the area for public guest restrooms. They call it the Tomorrowland Station, which is we remember as Innovations restroom.
Yeah, Skyway before that.
Before that, yeah. And then Space Mountain, of course.
The Space Mountain restrooms, so you can come right out the exit of Space Mountain, and if you need to toss your cookies, you can do it right there in that restroom.
Yeah. Some past attractions. I said I just mentioned a few. Adventure Through Inner Space was you and I. That was one of our first shows that we did together. Laura was still part of the show, but it was more. Like she couldn't make it that week or something, and then you and I did a Adventure Through Inner Space. We did a whole history on it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was years ago. The rocket jets, which used to be on top of, it used to be the People Mover. Used to be on top, yeah. And that's still there, but it's not operational.
Part of the mechanism, the part of the mechanism is there. It's redressed as the Observatron.
Yeah, which isn't even working anymore. So.
Yeah. Well, it's such a complicated,
It spins around. Mission to Mars. Something else.
Mission to Mars, yes, that based off of the movie. Oh no, I think I have that the other way around.
I don't know if it was based off. That's where Alien Pizza Planet is now. Used to be Red Rocket Pizza Port.
Yeah. And they decided, well, that's not synergistic at all.
Who is Red Rocket?
Yeah.
People Mover, of course. We've mentioned that. Interventions, America Sings, Carousel Progress.
Yeah.
And now Launch Bay.
I don't think America Sings and Carousel Progress were ever open at the same time.
Nope.
I wonder why. Okay.
That's weird, huh? They could have, right? What else do we have? Oh, the Skyway, of course.
Yeah.
And House of the Future. Magic.
Yeah, that was right there at the entrance of Tomorrowland.
Yep. Magic Eye Theater, we'd mentioned. Circle Vision. And where's Buzz Lightyear now? And then Rocket Rods, we'd mentioned. And when they built Rocket Rods, remember I always find this so fascinating. So that tunnel that they had for the queue was not there before. Was that not there before?
They had to create that tunnel specifically for that purpose.
Really? So that's interesting. Because I didn't work there. Well, I didn't work in Custodial prior to that opening, so I wasn't sure.
I mean, there is the separate utilidor.
Yeah.
That goes kind of north of that. That goes from behind the Launch Bay building over towards the Matterhorn at the far end of the Buzz Lightyear building, sort of towards the parade route there. There's a door. There's just a simple door there. If you open the door, you go down some steps and you're there in the utilidor, and you can walk all the way to the backstage area from there. So
I remember going down there, doing some exploring before Buzz Lightyear opened, and Rocket Rods had been closed for a couple of years at that point, and because it led, it kind of went there by Radio Disney and then all that was kind of around there, but I remember it was pretty interesting. I bet that tunnel's still there. I don't know, I'm fascinated with that tunnel. You know what, they should connect that tunnel to the one you had just mentioned. I don't know what they would use it for, but I'm just saying.
Well, the utilidor was kind of a forerunner for what they did with Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. Just a utility tunnel where you can move stuff, you can move supplies in and out. You had all the pipes underneath there, stuff like that. Had a very distinctive smell to it.
Was that built when the subs were built?
I think it was built with the 67 Tomorrowland renovation, I think.
But the subs, I remember seeing some of the pipes. I thought it had something to do with the subs, but maybe not. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't. I think all those. I think the hardware for the subs is
be in the back.
Yeah.
So it's probably done for 67. Let's see what else we have. Flying saucers. We talked about that.
Those are so fabled. They, of course, they brought them back as Luigi's flying tires, but people weren't as enthusiastic to ride flying tires as they were flying saucers. So,
Okay. Let's see here. Oh, I'd mentioned, so I just have some various things that we can kind of talk about as I mention them. I mentioned Radio Disney. Remember when they used to broadcast that from...
Yeah.
That was really interesting.
Just plain Mark and Zippy were there in a little booth, like zoo animals, and you would come by and there they were,
Yeah.
They would have a busser come in there for a segment called, What Did I Find in the Trash? Or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The busser from like Tomorrowland Terrace would look what I found in the trash,
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool that they or included, them in that. So then, there used to be, remember when the subs were closed? So the submarines were closed from I think I mentioned this, the whole time I was working at
It was
Disney.
your fault.
Yeah, but remember they had a store there? It was something to do with Utopia, and they had it like right there in the queue. It was kind of a weird, like outdoor kind of a shop thing.
Yeah, where you could get your Utopia driver's licenses.
Yeah, and they had some other stuff to do with, was it Chevron or something, one of those?
Well, Chevron was the sponsor.
Yeah, but they had some
originally.
Yeah. I forgot about that until I was looking at
because Chevron's advertising campaign had these cars that, and I think this is before Pixar's cars, but they had these cars that had, that were characters.
Right.
And they were in their advertising campaign, so they incorporated them into the Utopia. And then, of course, you could buy toys there at the exit of the Utopia.
Yeah, I remember that. So I have on here 67 and 98. And I think the reason I put those on there was because those were years that Tomorrowland had some of the bigger changes. I know that when Space Mountain was built and when it opened in 77, that whole complex was big, but that was just mainly one area, where these two, where the whole area was pretty much affected, mostly. So I know that 67 gets a lot of attention, and it should, because I think it was one of the best things that Tomorrowland, one of the best times in Tomorrowland's history.
Yeah.
For sure. If you think about it, some amazing attractions opened that year that, between Adventures Through Inner Space and People Mover, the rockets got put up on a higher place that made it more thrilling on top of the People Mover.
Yes.
Carousel Progress opened then.
Which had been, the Carousel Progress debuted at the 1964 New York World's Fair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
sometimes I forget. I'm glad you mentioned that, because sometimes when we do these shows, sometimes I forget that not everyone knows some of this stuff. And not that I know it all, but I'm just saying I forget, that maybe people didn't know that. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Sometimes I just take it for granted that people know that.
Well, a lot of our listeners know a lot of this stuff,
but
not all of them.
They do.
We want to bring in new listeners. People. We want to familiarize people with Disneyland who are thinking about taking a visit, and they don't go all the time, and they're not as familiar with Disney history. So we're hoping to spread the love of Disney history to even more people.
True.
Yeah.
That is true, Ken. Also.
Yes.
1998, I had mentioned that. I think we've had quite a bit of discussion on this show about that. I think that was another big one that we remember because we were working there during that time.
We were there, yeah.
I wasn't there during the construction of it, but I was a pass holder during that time. And then when it opened, I had started that summer.
It was interesting during construction, and the land was not completely closed. Yeah. So there were a lot of walls up, and there was a lot of stuff that was closed, even if it wasn't being. There were times where something would be down for renovation, so guests would come over there and they go, "What's is this open? No. Is that open? No. Is that open? No." And it's like, what's open? And you're like, I'm sorry, because they're paying full price. It's not like they got a discounted price or anything.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
That is funny. Yeah, so 98 was interesting. That was where everything got the bronze, coating, and Space Mountain was like at a gold bronze color, which was interesting. It kind of reminded me a lot, and I think a lot of it was inspired by is it Discoveryland at Paris?
Yeah.
to go under kind of that theme. And it was a good idea. I think that there were some things that were cut.
Well, we could do a whole show as to why
I know
Tomorrowland 1998 turned out the way it did, and a lot of it had to do with the management that was in place at the time and shifting sponsorships. You know, the things weren't going according to plan with certain sponsors, so there wasn't nearly as much money. You know, you're using a smaller budget for the entire land, which probably the budget should have just been used for one major attraction. You know?
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, maybe we will do a whole episode on that in the future. I know that we had done a show on 98, but I don't know how in depth we went into it. I start to forget these things after so many shows.
Well, they say memory's the second thing to go, don't they?
Oh, true. Okay. Another thing I wanted to mention was in 67 when the Mary Blair murals were put in place?
I believe so.
Yeah.
That would have been part of the that wonderful 1967 project.
Yeah, really neat. So I had heard that on one of the sides, they're still under there.
Well, yeah, because people were like, well, why didn't they move the murals? And it's like, well, the way the construction was, they could, the exposure to the elements and everything, it was just not in a condition to move it, and so they ended up just covering it over,
Yeah. It's unfortunate because, those were beautiful.
Yes, they were.
I loved when you were on the People Mover and you were almost eye level with it, instead of looking up at it. And that was probably the best view of those then. Space Mountain. Remember, they gutted out the whole building practically. I remember walking by there in 2004.
Maybe, because it reopened in 2005. It was completely rebuilt, and the track was pretty much exactly the same. If you remembered, if you rode it enough times before, you knew every twist and turn, and you would recognize that it was exactly the same when it reopened. So that was quite amazing.
Yeah, remember that? And I remember walking by the building, and they'd have part of the building opened up so they could take materials out, and I remember just seeing dirt in some of it. I was like, wow, that's amazing. But yeah, they rebuilt the whole thing exactly the same. As far as the track layout, I'm sure there was added supports and things put in there.
Yeah.
Safety measures and catwalks and things.
Make it easier to do maintenance and evacuations and stuff like that.
Remember Push, the trash can?
I do. We were buddies.
Yeah. I always thought that was pretty neat. They used to have a lot of different entertainment there that I shouldn't say I don't see anymore, because they do have the Disneyland Band comes over to Tomorrowland now, which back in with the old Disneyland Band, I don't think you would ever see them in Tomorrowland, but this one they do go up there. What was that one band they used to have that's sort of like the new Disneyland Band? It was like the Kingdom Core or something like that. Remember that?
Yeah.
I think it was called Kingdom Core.
Yeah, and then there was... Well, you started talking about bands. I was thinking about TranStar that used to be there.
Oh.
When the Mission to Mars building was closed, where they hadn't torn it out yet,
yes.
TranStar would perform over there in front of Mission to Mars.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so Tomorrowland's been known for music from, I don't know about the beginnings, but I know way back. I mean, remember the stage that used to be where the Magic Eye Theater is? That used to be an open stage, like a outdoor stage, kind of covered stage, but the seating was opened up, and I remember seeing music there and looking over the balcony where the Star Space Mountain queue is now. You would look down over the railing and look down at the people sitting below and at the stage.
Yeah.
And that was way back. That was before Captain EO.
Well, that was, you have to, remember the 1967 renovation it had a stage there.
Mm-hmm.
But the 1967 renovation didn't have the Space Mountain complex.
Right.
So that was added for 1977. Mm-hmm. And, so you had Space Mountain open up, you had the new stage there, you had the Space Place restaurant, and you had the Starcade arcade there. That opened up basically the same weekend Star Wars originally, the original movie came out. We're talking about the weekend that changed everything,
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't put that together, but yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, so there's always been a lot of music, and we didn't even mention that the Tomorrowland Terrace with the stage that comes up and down, goes down into the ground.
Yeah, by the way, that's another thing about the Utilidor, is that stage, when it lowers down, it's right there by the Utilidor. There's a green room down there and all that sort of thing. So the bands can get in and out to that stage without going through the rest of the park. Mm-hmm. So if you had somebody who was really famous and going to get mobbed, I mean, I remember before he really hit it big in the movies, mm-hmm. I remember Will Smith appearing on that stage.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
there was a DJ. There's a DJ called Hollywood Hamilton that would do shows there like every Sunday, mm-hmm. and I think they were live broadcasts. And Will Smith joined him one time to talk, and and the crowd was going nuts. And of course, like I said, Will Smith was. I don't even know if he must have had his TV show by then, mm-hmm. But he was definitely a music star by then.
Yeah.
Not a movie star. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely music has been a big part of and not to mention the Trash Can Trio, too. Remember that? They'd always come in there and take their breaks, right?
They would take their breaks right there on stage. I would tell them to get back to work, so,
I thought that was funny. Yeah, so I just have different facts here, but America Sings, when that had closed in, was it 80?
Close in 88.
Yeah, I was going to say 87, 88.
Earlier 88, yeah.
They moved, even prior to the closing, they started to move some of the audio animatronics
mm-hmm.
out slowly. Star Tours did receive some of those, and of course Splash Mountain.
Yeah, Star Tours has got a couple of the geese, mm-hmm. so if you were riding America Sings, instead of 4 geese in that scene, there were only 2, but they became the droids that were in the queue at Star Tours. Just really briefly, I want to point out, because there's a little bit of misinformation about how things happened, and I just wanted to quickly clear it up.
Yeah.
When they were considering building a Star Wars base attraction, okay, one of the concepts was going to be where the America Sings building was. Mm-hmm. And Tony Baxter was thinking, well, what's going to happen to all those, what's going to happen to all the animatronics and everything else in there, And he knew that they were, people like Dick Nunis and stuff who wanted a log ride at Disneyland. So anyway, he came up with the idea for Splash Mountain, and he and like John Stone and Bruce Gordon and a bunch of other people really worked on this, and they put together the Splash Mountain concept. And Bruce Gordon really kept it alive, kept pushing for it. And when Michael Eisner and Frank Wells became installed at the head of the company, they decided they're going to visit Imagineering and check things out. And Michael Eisner was there with at least one of his sons. And Bruce Gordon had made sure the Splash Mountain model was out and everything. And one of Eisner's sons bumped into that model and fell in love with it. And the project got the go-ahead. Now, by the time, so it's good. The project is using the characters from America Sings, in new roles as part of the deal. Mm. By the time they realized that the Star Wars attraction was going to be Star Tours and replace Adventure to Inner Space, the the Splash Mountain project already had momentum.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't that, some people say, well, it was because of a budget overrun that they ended up using the characters for, no, they were Splash Mountain was always going to use the characters from America Sings. Yes, there were budget overruns with Splash Mountain, mainly having to do with the ride system. But yeah, so that's the story behind that. We can always go into more depth than that later, but yeah, so America Sings was closed in early 1988.
Mm-hmm.
I heard they were going to close, so I went and took videotape of it.
Oh.
Actual videotape. This is before, smartphones and digital. Yeah, it was actual videotape.
Very cool. Yeah.
Because I really liked that attraction.
Mm-hmm. I did too.
Yeah.
What else we have here?
But that's the fate of Tomorrowland. It's things open and close. I mean, people talk about Adventure Through Inner Space, and it's like you realize that attraction was only there. That attraction was there for 18 years. Mm-hmm. Adventure Through Inner Space. Think about it. California Adventure's been open longer than 18 years. And same thing with House of the Future. The House of the Future was only there for 10 years. But these are iconic attractions that people still remember to this day and talk about and wish would come back in some form and wish they could relive them.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
But that's the fate of Tomorrowland because it's Tomorrowland.
I don't know why, and maybe it's because, but I was going to say, Tomorrowland always reminds me of, when I think of Tomorrowland or I'm over there, in some of the areas that haven't really been changed too much, I always think of like my youth, and it's probably because that used to be the place to go, especially if you were a teenager.
Yeah. Oh, sure. You had the Starcade.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. Starcade.
Music at Tomorrowland Terrace,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can get burgers and fries at Tomorrowland Terrace.
Yeah, it was the place to be, and that was the first place everyone would run to, because there was so much to do there. Now, I think that it still has. I mean, Space Mountain is still probably one of the most popular attractions in the park.
Yeah.
I mean, Rise Resistance, but that's new, but Space Mountain, I mean, it's been open since 1977, and it still holds up to any of the, popular attractions there now. So what I was saying is, like, it's still the place to go. There's still attractions that people want. Star Tours is still very popular. Not nearly as popular as it used to be, but it still has a decent wait. The wait is never really long for that because it has such a good capacity, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the 4 different.
And another thing is, if there is a problem with one of the cabins, you still have the other 3.
Yeah. So
that attraction, the only reason that the entire attraction would have to go down if there was something really unusual. Mm-hmm. So that thing can continue to get guests through it. I think at Walt Disney World's, they had 6 cabins there at the attraction when it opened in the studio park. Mm-hmm. So, 50% more capacity.
Wow.
Yeah, but those were the days.
Those were the days, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tomorrowland, we talked about a little bit about its past and its future. Or not future, its present. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about the future now. I know that a lot of people, we've had many discussions, and a lot of people are hoping that at this year's D23, and if you're listening to this after that happens, then you already know what happened, but a lot of people are kind of in hopes that there'll be some sort of announcement for Tomorrowland. Specifically for me is mainly, what if we just kept it the way it was, but we filled in these vacant spots? I think that would help out, especially with something that was interesting or popular for the guests, and not just a shop or some kind of a display or a preview for a movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not an Imagineer. They don't, I don't have that kind of thinking. But I know that people that do probably have some great ideas to fill these spaces.
I'm sure there's a lot of good ideas. I've ruminated on this myself. To me, it makes a difference if they're going to ever build a third gate at the Disneyland Resort.
Right.
Which I think they will eventually. It's just a question of how far away that is. If one of the things about, let's liken it to things at Walt Disney World. Walt Disney World has Epcot Center, or excuse me, it's Epcot now, and it had what was Future World. If you have that, it kind of changes what you need Tomorrowland for. Because you have an entire area of another park, half of Epcot is dedicated to futurism, or it was, and if if the same thing is going to happen at Disneyland, if you're going to get a third park that has a futurism element to it, maybe they will, maybe they won't. That kind of changes what you need Tomorrowland for. There's a whole bunch of different ideas you can use. I mean, over the years, there's been like, well, let's do it, retro. Let's make it look like 1950s future, Jetsons, whatever, or, the Montana Tomorrowland, quote unquote. It was kind of like, what would it look like if we tried to make it look as natural as possible? Kind of like, making it look like natural landscaping as much of the area. I mean, it depends on what else you're going to have at the resort. Because it wouldn't make sense to build like a third gate that's got a futuristic element if you've got a futuristic Tomorrowland still. You kind of open it up to be more fantasy and sci-fi or whatever. I mean, like there's people who say, well, Buzz Lightyear shouldn't be there because Buzz Lightyear's a toy, and I guess they kind of took care of that with the latest movie, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they could bring back, there's speculation that, and people have really want the People Mover back. The thing is, they got rid of the People Mover because people weren't going on it. They would have kept it if the lines were always packed and people were going on it. But I understand, but a lot of people want it back. I just don't know. Just from what I know, it just doesn't seem possible in the condition.
You would have to do an entirely new track,
right,
I think.
Right. I don't know. They'd have to, retrofit a lot of things, and it'd probably be more work to try to salvage what track there is left of it, than trying to build a new one. But that would be great if there was some sort of substitute for the People Mover that was a different kind of attraction. I mean, a similar attraction, but obviously a different. That would be neat too. Some people say they'd want them to get rid of the subs. I don't think especially after they just put a lot of money into refurbishing the subs recently. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah. I think you could build over more of it, though.
Yeah.
I mean, part of the appeal is the lagoon and seeing the movement and stuff like that. But I do think there are ways of building over it. When you take something out like the Utopia, you've got to have something that approximates that experience. The thing about the Utopia, and a lot of adults forget this, is kids really love being able to drive, quote unquote, a vehicle themselves. They don't get to do that in the real world. Disneyland is a place where they can do that. And if you're going to take that out, you gotta think of some sort of thing that replaces it. I mean, I was thinking one of the things I kicked around is, and I think I tweeted out this in a tweet storm, but what if like you could have like a bring back the rocket jets sort of thing, but you make the vehicles bigger so more people can fit in them, but the rocket jets itself is presented as a training mechanism for new pilots, so you have the younger people controlling the up and down, and instead of having that be the ride, you have it spin around a few times, but then you have it so that the rockets actually come off of that mechanism onto tracks, and this could replace the Utopia, and so you maybe at the start of the ride, everybody votes, they push a little button inside the rocket they're in as to which destination they're going to go, and then they can actually go off in different directions. Now that would take quite a bit of engineering, but it's exactly the kind of thing they need because it's a wow thing, where this thing that looks like just an ordinary spinner attraction becomes the start of a much more elaborate attraction where, those people all depart on their journeys, and then the replacement rockets attach, and then you can load another batch of people on there. Something like that where, if you do that, you can get rid of the Utopia because you're giving kids another way of piloting something. If, they can pilot that up and down and then, maybe on the subsequent track. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It would be complicated, but it's not impossible. Probably would break down a lot at first, but there are ways to do it. And, they need to do something that's kind of like a wow, you can't do that anywhere else,
Yeah, for sure. So, well, I thought we'd also now move into our custodial part where we talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we did. So some of this has changed, and we've talked about this in our latest book, Cleaning the Kingdom, Night, Day, Past, and Present. So we talk a little bit about some of the changes that happen in the areas, the coverage and different things. But so let's talk a little bit about when we worked there and what it was like then. So custodial, each area has sweepers that are divided up into areas. And so Tomorrowland, when we worked there was the entrance person. Remember and that covered the entrance up to the hub, and then I think it went all the way like where the people mover, where that area.
Yeah, back towards the Star Trader.
Yeah. Right in that area there. Remember the entrance person had a pager.
Yes. How quaint.
Yeah. And
before that it was a messenger pigeon.
Yeah. And the trash people that dump trash, not just in Tomorrowland, but in all the areas, had a pager too, if there was a full trash can. But and there was entrance. Then there was we called it Space Mountain, and they covered pretty much the exit of Space Mountain up to the entrance of Space Mountain, kind of over near the entrance of Interventions, like in that area. And then kind of overlap the entrance of Tomorrowland, a little bit of that area. And then there was the other area was called Subs Mono, and that was, I think it'd go back by the train station, and then all the way over to past the Subs.
Yeah, back when the Pixie area was Triton Gardens.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would call that area Train to Triton.
Oh, yeah.
Well, because otherwise it was called like submono, which sounds like a disease,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. I actually had, if I had extra people besides a breaker, I'd have someone, I think I called it Circle, which they just kind of, it's pretty much like a roam. I mean, you would just have someone that could complete that whole circle. They could go from like that area you're talking about to the where Pixie's Hollow is. Used to be the mermaid thing there, and then to go through there and then back to the entrance of Tomorrowland. Like they could do that whole thing.
Right. Because you have to remember, folks, that any place with tables for eating was busser territory. So Tomorrowland Terrace and the surrounding area that had tables was busser territory.
Wow. That's true. Then, let's see what else do we have here. Oh, Lions. So we had a Lions cast member that would sweep all the... And there was quite a few at... throughout our different times that we worked there. There was Star Tours, Astro Orbiter,
Space Mountain.
Well, we had Rocket Rods, and there's a separate person.
That was Rocket Rods, for the short time it was open, had a separate designated person to sweep that line and dump, kind of like Indiana Jones. Sweep that line, dump the trash in there, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Respond to calls that, if there was an issue, because it was quite an extensive queue.
Yeah, it really was. It's too bad it didn't work out.
But the lines person would also, hit the train station when the submarines were open. Do that. The monorail platform and the Utopia.
Yeah, and then the Honey, I Shrunk the Audience queue area.
Oh yeah,
the waiting area there.
Waiting area.
Yeah.
I mean, officially, whoever was sweeping that area in general was supposed to kind of keep an eye on the waiting areas too. Like if you were doing entrance, you were kind of supposed to keep an eye on the Star Tours line. But realistically, you're not going to be able to go deep into Star Tours and sweep. You've got your 50. At the time, we had 15-minute rounds, and you had to focus on the outside area for that. But if for some reason the line got short, of course you'd sweep whatever was exposed. But it really helped to have a dedicated lines person to sweep those lines, because that's all they focused on. They didn't have to take care of everything else in the area.
Right. Then we did the honey sweeps. Was it
yes?
Twice
So before
a
that,
day?
we had EO sweeps. Yes, yeah.
Was it twice a day? We did one about. Was it 2:00 or something?
Yeah, it was 2 or 3 times a day. More likely 2.
Yeah.
What the Tomorrowland foreman would do was put an asterisk by the names of the people he wanted participating into it, and then say we're going to have a honey sweep or a hista sweep at 2 p.m. or whatever, and then so everybody would meet over there. You would put certain people on and other people you wouldn't, because you need them covering the area. But your lines person, your breaker, maybe your Space Mountain person, whatever. And you would meet back there. You'd go to the back of the theater, basically. You'd slip in there while the show was going. And then the people who were waiting to get in there had to wait. The pre-show would end, and then they would still be waiting there, because we needed to get in there and sweep it out. Just take care of anything that's been dropped in there up until that point of the day.
I remember a couple of times standing in the back and watching the last 2-3 minutes of it. In the inside actually, which is kind of fun to see, because how the audience would move, the whole platform it's on or something. It was kind of interesting to see that from that view. But and then we had trash. So we had usually 2 people, but it would usually start off with 1. I think the second wouldn't come on till a little bit later sometimes. Just depended on the schedule. But yeah, we'd have someone dump trash, and there's a lot of bullet cans in there, which were the indoor queue trash cans.
Yeah, they used to all be bullet shaped, but there's very few, if any, of those left. we used to, those are the ones that would be bagged, and the ones outside would not be bagged. If a can outside was bagged, it was, then it wasn't part of a queue. It meant it was a busser area. But that's one of the things that changed since we left. They started bagging all the cans. But the trash person, there were a couple of packers that the Tomorrowland person would use. There was the one right next to the Innovations building or Star Wars launch bay. There's that gate there that's between the pizza restaurant and the launch bay, or the old America Sings building, whatever you want to call it. There's a gate there, and right behind that gate, back behind that gate, there's a trash compactor. Same thing, there was a trash compactor back behind the restrooms there at Plaza Inn, by the entrance of Tomorrowland. So those are the two places our trash people could take their trash. Or if for some reason they couldn't use those, maybe they were at the exit of Space Mountain, they would take their trash behind the gate there over to Main Street and use the Main Street packer there. But normally it was the one behind Plaza Inn and the one behind the pizza restaurant. Also, there was one that we would use if we were dumping the ones in the Space Mountain line. There was the upper level of, it's been used as the queue area in recent years, but it used to be the upper level of the Space Place restaurant. Right, I remember that. And there was a chute there behind the scenes, and you could take bagged you drop the bags down the chute, and it would go down into a trash compactor that was on the lower level. Mm-hmm. They eventually closed that up, but that was another convenient thing to use, because Tomorrowland's a pretty big area in terms of everything that we needed to do to cover it. Right.
Something else I was going to mention is the locker. We had we call it our locker, which was our station, our post where we would have our assignment list of for the cast members and what their assignment was. We'd have supplies there and things like that. Kind of a place to meet too if we needed to.
And that moved, right? During my time there. Yeah, like it at one point it was right behind that Space Mountain gate there, between this the exit of Space Mountain and the Space Mountain restrooms. I remember that. There's a gate there, and there was one. It used to be right behind there, and they needed to add another building backstage, so they ended up moving it. But it got moved behind what was called the center. I mean, it was like halfway to the Main Street locker by then.
Oh, that's what I remember. I don't remember the first.
That was one place, and there was there was another time that it was also back behind the Innovations building. That was another time that it was back there. So it changed over the years. Yeah. When I became lead, it was when it was back there halfway to Main Street, back behind the center, because that was my first lead shift, was Tomorrowland, and I got called. Eddie Ramos. Okay, he was the men's East restroom lead, and he calls me and says, "Can you 87 me over here by Skyway restroom?" And I'm thinking, oh, something, what happened over here, Yeah. So I'm your first lead shift, you're kind of frantic, So I rush over there, and when I get there, he basically says, "Well, my work here's done," and that's when it hit me, because what had happened was he was luring me really far away from our locker. Yeah. And it was, I realized what was going on, and I turned back and rushed back to catch people back there, the other leads, who were on duty at the time for the different areas. They were there, and they were scattering like cockroaches. And it was just like, that was the hazing thing. What they had done is they had emptied the supply closet of everything that was in there. They emptied it out, and I knew at some point that was coming, but at that point in my shift, I was too distracted to think about it. Right. until I realized why Eddie was having me meet him there. And I actually took that as a great sign of affection and, welcoming to the status of being a foreman.
Yeah.
And I had to track down all my supplies and put them right back inside the locker, not as neatly as they had been when, they raided it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's funny. The last thing I have on here is, or I shouldn't say the last thing, is that, remember the pavers? Remember when they put in the pavers?
I think that was with the 98 renovation, wasn't it?
Yeah. Remember that? Well, I don't know if it was with it, or I know they were still continuing, because I remember there was areas that was closed off. And I was trying to remember if that was prior to it or during.
Pavers were becoming all the rage, I mean, Tomorrowland had been a wonderful area with slurry, nice, flat, smooth slurry all over Tomorrowland. And they replaced that with pavers, which sometimes would come loose.
Wasn't it like the first area with pavers, and eventually Main Street and all these different?
Yeah, I think Tomorrowland was first. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, let's. I mean, I think they used different ones in Fantasyland, so I don't think Fantasyland counted. But I don't know. It was. It wasn't as easy to work with as slurry, and. Most of them got, I think most or if not all of it got replaced by just plain old stamped concrete, which, is still not as good as slurry.
Right.
The slurry covered smooth, surface was much better to keep clean.
Yes, for sure. And I wanted to mention that Tomorrowland was the place where I had the most code V's in one day.
Yeah, I think these are stories we include in our first book, by the way.
Yes.
Cleaning the Kingdom.
And many more stories that we're not going to include during this episode, because you need to buy the books.
Yeah, that's right.
So that you can get all the details on that story in the book. But Tomorrowland was either you loved it or you didn't. And it wasn't like, it's okay. I think a lot of people liked it, and this was one reason that I liked Main Street was, especially at night, was that your shift went by really fast because you kept busy, and it was always getting calls, especially if you're a lead, always getting calls. But I also want to mention that there was a time, and I think it was after you had left, that we experimented with having a Space Mountain person.
Right.
Where they had a radio too, and they dumped their own trash cans. Because remember, there was a lot of bullets in that. Queue. I don't think they do that now, but I know for a while that we had that available. Well, I mean, we could probably go on and on about Tomorrowland. There's so many things. I mean, remember, there's we could talk about the specifics of 98 or 1967. And talk about those, but there's not time for all that. But we hope you enjoyed this overview of Tomorrowland and this discussion, and hopefully we'll have an announcement soon.
Yeah, I'm sorry our guest was so quiet throughout this episode. No, I'm just kidding. But Tomorrowland. I could talk about Tomorrowland for hours and hours and hours, and sometime I will if you let me. So,
but we better get going. Okay, well that is the conclusion of episode 341.
Wow, I could listen to those guys forever.
Well.
No, it's really nice to, I mean, people just wonder why we have guests on so frequently. People wonder if we just couldn't get anybody. But every once in a while, we like to just do a show with just the two of us. So, and we had plenty of people, joining us last episode for our Patreon supporters joining us with the chat. So, you never know. Having just the two of us is quite different. And sometimes that's good. And, we'll have another special guest soon. I mean, we love having guests, but sometimes it's good just to talk with the two of us.
Yeah, we have an amazing show set up for next time, so you don't want to miss noticed that. Couple things before we go. I wanted to mention we have a new review on Apple Podcasts, and I'm going to read that real quick. Again, can't read the whole title. They cut it off on here. I don't know why. This is great background music, maybe? Or noise. August 11th, 2022. 5 stars. By DGH and Yeti. Says 2 former custodians provide insight on operations at Disneyland. Nice stories from them and their guests, also providing a summary of current events at Disneyland. That is what we do. Thank you so much for the review. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That was great.
A couple little things before we go. If you want to leave a review that would really help us out, you can do that on Apple Podcasts, and we'll read that. Also, go to our website. We have all the information on everything we do, on our books, Patreon, shirts, show notes from our current events, and show notes for this episode. We have so many things over there. Our good friend Russell is always updating stuff for us on there. We'll hope to see everyone at D23 that you can make it. We will be providing updates from there, so follow us on our social medias, wherever that is. And thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk with you next time.